Fearless. Provocative.
We pledge to say it like it really is.
With dignity and respect.
Committed to free speech and common sense.
Upbeat and entertaining.
Straight talking and direct.
We may agitate each other and you.
Heartfelt and passionate.
Thought-provoking, provocative and controversial.
Fearless and truthful.
Welcome to The Pledge, the most unpredictable debate show on TV. In these times of crisis, Pledge panellist Rachel Johnson has this morning tweeted to offer her own personal Marmite stocks to those, and I quote, deprived by the Brexit shortage in Tesco. Right next to, now what's that on the left? Ah yes, Waitrose mango chutney. Where's the couscous, Rach? Brexit is certainly hitting the Rachel Johnson household hard already. Poor darling. Now this week, Greg has something very surprising to say about Nigel Farage. Michelle wants to ask you about your drinking habits. Afua says passports and Pampers don't mix. And Graham needs help thinking of a present for his wife. Once upon a time, it was said the sun never set on it. It was a source of national pride. This country earned respect around the globe. It should also be said the British Empire helped us earn untold riches into the bargain. There was good and bad, of course, as there is with just about everything. Now it's in vogue to see the empire as little more than an oppressive tool of subjugation. The first black footballer to play for Liverpool, Howard Gale, has turned down an MBE as the word empire was, he said, against my values. It wasn't perfect, but it brought order, security, education and democracy to much of the world. It's time the empire strikes back.
Nick, I don't even know where to start with this. It brought
Just
good.
agree.
It brought good and bad. It brought good for Britain. It brought bad for the colonised people all over the world who are still struggling to recover from centuries of underdevelopment, from the transfer of wealth from their economies into Britain to build this nation into a great industrial power at their expense. And not even talking about the economic reality of empire, the exploitation that was deliberately built into the very concept of colonial exploitation. It was founded on an ideology of white supremacy. We all need to reject the empire. And the fact that the establishment in this country still expects people whose own families are still suffering as a result of colonialism to embrace the label of empire is offensive, and it needs to change. It needs to change if we are truly to become a tolerant society that embraces people of all backgrounds, because there's no way somebody like me, who personally has seen the devastating mental effects of imperialism, inner as well as external, could ever sign up to a label of empire.
And can you step off the soapbox now? Maybe let me get a word in. Perhaps I can refer you to some work by some learned scholars in India who point out that India effectively was a disparate bunch of warring tribes. There was murder, there was widespread mayhem, and the British, I agree, they didn't do it by necessarily diplomatic means. Might had to be right on occasions, but the British put in a system that actually brought about education, that actually brought about partial emancipation of women, that actually brought about democracy, that made India where it is today. India is a classic example, and I did say right at the top, there is good and there is bad. There is a lot of good. You must acknowledge some of that.
Let's look. I think, you say it's in vogue to hate the empire. I actually disagree. I think it's in vogue to regard the empire through these rose-tinted lenses as a kind of benevolent Victorian NGO that went around building schools and hospitals. Yes, the empire left infrastructure in countries. Let's look at Africa. The infrastructure the empire built, it wasn't for the development of Africans. It wasn't to enhance their trade or their cultural structures. It was to extract gold, cocoa, tin, copper, rubber from the interior to the sea so it could be shipped to build Britain. After the Second World War, Britain rebuilt its economy by repaying American loans directly with raw commodities from the empire. Everything it did was not designed to benefit the people in those countries. It was designed to benefit Britain, and it shows.
A question, and we must bring some of the other panel in a moment. Last one for you, Af. How have some of the countries fared since the empire took down the Union flag?
Well, I'll just talk about the country my family's from, Ghana.
Ghana, maybe we could talk about some of the African countries.
A monoculture, which is another thing the empire did. It created monocultures. It chose the commodity most profitable. Ghana, it was cocoa. The entire economy was built on cocoa, which was great when cocoa was booming. The cocoa price collapses, the economy collapses. Ghana's never recovered.
Okay.
You can go around Africa
so
looking at all of these. They're all extractive countries. None of them have managed to master manufacturing or technology or the service industries, and that is a direct legacy of colonialism.
Now, someone who has, of course, course, was a schoolboy when the Empire first started. Greg, let's...
No, I do remember Empire Day. So it
Do
shows
you
how
really?
far I can just remember.
Remind the
and it
viewers what
changed.
Empire Day was.
Empire Day was a day when all the kids got them, waved flags and the rest of it, and it became Commonwealth Day probably 2 years later. So I do remember Empire Day when I was a little kid. I don't agree with a word of what you've said, Nick. I really don't. I mean, you've managed to miss out slavery out of all this.
Oh, hang on. Which country was at the forefront of stopping slavery?
Yes, but which country was at the forefront of promoting it for many, many years?
Yes, and then saw
that was the British Empire. But you must understand that if you've a black heritage, you look at what the British did in Africa and you say, hang on, this wasn't acceptable. We just turned up and took it over, reorganised the boundaries, drew straight lines, said that tribe's that.
Hang on. I appreciate there was and I've said that, but again, built schools, built railways, built bridges, left that infrastructure.
What I'm sort of failing to understand is what the point is now in terms of what is the solution you're looking for? Are you looking for more national pride? Are you protecting? I'm not. We've got to live in today, and obviously countries evolve, policies evolve, people, change.
I think what I'm after is, I think, and no one can, whatever Mr. Gale thinks.
Yeah, absolutely.
We must respect that. But it's time to stop seeing empire as a dirty word. Because there are benefits. I take on board, of course, both the points interesting on my right, but there have been good points, and I do think that has to be accepted.
But is there a responsibility? Do we need a responsible sort of action in terms of what is, what Af was saying?
This lady's not for turning, are you?
No, but is there something we can do in terms of compensation? Should we be doing more for people from?
Before we even talk about reparations, which I wasn't going to open that can of worms, I think we can't embrace empire or our history until we've been honest about it. And what people in this country seem to want to do is, having gone from a position where we ignore the truth about the bad things that happened to a position where we just celebrate it, we need to be honest. Most people in this country don't know about empire. They don't know the devastating consequences it had. They don't know about the concentration camps. They don't know about the famines. They don't know about the commodity exploitation. The side effects, some of which have been benevolent, were not accomplished because they were meant to benefit people. It was just a consequence.
India didn't have schools.
The main point...
There were no schools in India.
3 million people died in a famine that the British created. Well, how can you say that the fact that there are a few schools left behind...
I seem to be being pushed along the peninsula. My only hope of an ally...
Hello,
Michelle.
Yes.
And?
Well, I have to say, this whole conversation was started by someone turning down the MBE because of the reference to the Empire. First and foremost, I'd never even considered an MBE enough to think about what do those letters actually stand for. And now that I've considered it, I don't necessarily have a problem with it. I think what an accolade. To be offered an MBE is fantastic. And before I came on here, I spoke to a friend of mine who received an MBE and accepted it. He's a black guy. He told me it is the proudest thing that he has. I asked him, what about these connotations of empire, slavery, whatever? And he said, what an accolade to stand here in 2016 as a black man and have, my ancestors gone through the things that they've gone through. They were suppressed. They didn't have their talents recognised. They weren't able to showcase who they were. Fast forward now, what a lesson to give to his son. He lives in a country now that has history, but it's history, the good, the bad, the ugly. We are where we are today. You can't deny the history, and who knows where we would be today. Where we are today is a society that's tolerant of people, that gives opportunities to those people, whoever you are, whichever colour, creed or anything, to shine. And this is an accolade that I think should be celebrated, and you can't deny the history.
I think the good, the bad and the ugly is a really good... It's like the three men on the pledge panel today, good, bad and ugly. So going to Greg as the ugly... No, that's a fair...
You're certainly not the good one.
Oh, well, there you go, by default. I mean, I don't want to be judgmental about your friend, Michelle, but one of the side effects, one of the long-term consequences of empire, when the physical regime of empire fell apart, what was left was the mental colonisation. And a lot of people who were born in the empire or who are descended from people born in the empire have this residue where they are colonised. They look up to the empire themselves. They were taught to believe that Britain was superior to them,
But hasn't life
that English
moved on?
civilization was superior to their
But
own
hasn't life
civilization.
moved on?
No. My mother was
not think it
raised
should?
to believe that a princess, the definition of a princess, is a little white girl with blonde ringlets in Windsor Palace.
Yeah, but guess
And
what?
She was
the definition of a president
right,
now is a black guy. The
she was-
first lady is a black lady.
Oh,
life moves
Oh, it
on.
could be.
That's got rid of racial divisions in America.
Life
In fact,
moves
Obama's
on.
election has proved that we are a completely post-racial society where there's no injustice or brutality or oppression based on race.
But life
It's the
moves
opposite.
on.
It hasn't moved on yet. I would
But
love.
it has.
I would love to be able to sit around the
black guy
table
getting
and
offered
say.
this MBE, celebrated in this fantastic
I would love to be able to
Isn't
say
the
it was
MBE
passed.
discussion a bit irrelevant? I mean, it's a peg to get you in for this week to get to yeah,
don't knock it.
It doesn't matter that it's well. The MBE argument, I don't buy at all. I don't think it matters. I mean, it's called an MBE. No one ever thinks of it as a member of the British Empire, and I really don't.
But you have to respect his decision.
I respect his decision to take it, but I don't think it's relevant. There is a relevant discussion to be had about what happened about empire and what it meant. And in a multicultural society as we are now, you've got to be.
But that's
sensitive
courtesy
to
of the
that.
empire. Thanks to the empire, we have a multicultural society because we were able to welcome all these people
Which
from these other
we're
countries.
being really embracing of at the moment.
I don't
mean,
know.
look at
Hopefully
us.
we are.
You say you want us to acknowledge and celebrate our imperial past. At the same time,
no.
nobody seems very happy about the consequence,
don't
which is
want to
that we
see it.
have
I
a
don't-
multiracial society where people from all
I
over the
don't
world
want
have moved
people
here.
to see word empire akin to a word if I took now, I'd take us all off air. It's almost like a swear word and it shouldn't be. I acknowledge there was bad, but I ask that you acknowledge there is good.
Right, you two. Are you going to agree or not? I don't
Agree
think
to
you are.
disagree, but disagree to part.
Right.
That's what we're going to do.
Disagree to parts. On that note, last week, thanks to various professional events as well as my social life, I drank alcohol almost every day. This week, my Monday morning was predictably a write-off thanks to a heavy Sunday celebrating my birthday. And at least 2 of my friends have rang in sick with hangovers over the last few days. For years, there has been talk of binge drinking Brits, a label which conjures up images of a 20-year-old knocking back the shots on a Saturday night. But looking around, it's the middle-class professionals who are turning more and more to alcohol, seemingly ignorant to the damage we may be doing to ourselves. Pick up a box of cigarettes and you'll see it covered in the words, "Smoking kills." Pick up a bottle of wine and you'll see just a small, discreet reminder of unit guidelines. 83% of people who regularly drink above the recommended guidelines do not think their drinking is putting their long-term health at risk. We're lying about the damage we're doing to ourselves and to our NHS. It's time to be honest about drink.
OK, 2 questions, Michelle. One quite light-hearted. When you go for your annual medical or whatever it is, and it says,
I don't.
how much do you drink?
Yeah.
You lie along with everybody else, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Yes, everybody lies. So actually, all your statistics, I would like to know what they're based on, because if they're based on those forms, then people don't tell the truth. Now, that's slightly light-hearted. The second is, look, OK, so say we buy your argument.
Yeah.
What are you going to do about it? Because I'm telling you, sticking "this could damage your health" on the side of a bottle is not going to change anything. So, I mean, have you got any policies that would actually make something happen, or is it just a piece of...
I have lots of ideas, but to your point, saying about putting health warnings on packages doesn't work, it does, because actually you can look at the health warnings on cigarettes. It has had an impact on how many people buy and consume cigarettes.
No,
and
the major effect on smoking was banning it in public places. That has dramatically changed smoking and the secondary effects of smoking. But just sticking on... We've had a label on the side of a cigarette packet for how many years?
I have a label. If
She really has got a drink problem.
Yeah, I have. I've got a straw as well that goes with this. But no, seriously, I drink, and I do, not just me, my friends and I drink. Some of my friends drink a huge amount. We're all very professional
What's a huge
people.
amount?
Oh, we drink most days. We go to the pubs, and the problem that you have is you go to the pub and you buy these large glasses of wine, 250 mils, and I can hear my friends, I can hear the sentence, "Are you having a large one? Are you having a large one? Let's just get the bottle." You get the bottle. You just do. You go to a supermarket, I think it's something like 2/3 of wine, or alcohol, sorry, is consumed or purchased from off-licensed supermarkets. You go into a supermarket, as soon as you walk in, 3 bottles for a tenner, this one's reduced, that one's reduced. You can't help yourself but buy.
So what you're saying is that you think that you want to see something like this?
I want to see, and not just me, by the way, there was a survey done recently and 81% of people agree with me that they would want to see some form of labelling. For example, I had no idea...
Do you really think that's going to change anything?
I think it may make some people stop and think twice. Yeah.
Your mates have just turned the bottle round.
They wouldn't.
One of the big things, obviously, is
look from the other side.
No, they wouldn't.
Where it's from.
It's a rather nice combination.
The cultural, I think, argument is the difficult one, because we have a culture where we can't open a bottle of wine and have a glass. We open a bottle of wine and convince ourselves that the wine will go off if we don't drink it all that evening. We do a lot of drinking at home as well.
It's interesting, isn't it? With culture in your sport, as soon as a team wins the Premiership, out comes the champagne.
Yes.
Yeah. As soon as a driver wins the Formula 1 Grand Prix, it's quite strange. Drivers get completely molled on champagne.
Yeah.
Your kid gets into university, you get a bottle of champagne. You have a baby, you get a round of drinks. It is bred into our culture, and it should be said. It shouldn't really be said. I get what you say about smoking, but the medical proof isn't quite into the same degree as regards drink, is there? There is a school of thought that in moderate sense, like half a glass of red or a glass of red a day, if it de-stresses you, some doctors would say actually it's a positive thing.
But the current NHS guidelines, there is no safe level of drinking alcohol.
What, not even...
Yeah,
which sounds extreme to me,
but
yeah, they're saying there is no
safe level of doing anything if you're going to be overly scientific about it. I mean, going back to the cultural thing, I mean, when I played football, we had a lot of European players in our club dressing room at Chelsea, for instance, and occasionally the manager, Vialli, when he was manager Italian, would put a couple of bottles of wine on the table, and the Italians and the Europeans would open the bottle and have a small glass. The English lads were trying to sort of nick the bottles and take them up to their room, and it's like, OK, we're going to have a party now. And it's I don't think it's a case of whether or not it's good or bad for you. I think people enjoy lots of things that are bad for them, but it's the way you drink, the moderation and the discipline that's important. And I'm concerned that actually there's a hidden health issue behind this, because the numbers will be staggering, I think, in terms of how many people drink way too much on a regular basis. I
want to throw something different out there, which is that I think actually there's a new generation for whom alcohol, they have a different relationship with it. And I know a lot of young people who don't drink at all. They don't drink at all. They're into this whole clean living thing. They go to the gym. They want to look good on Instagram. It's not necessarily for the best reasons. A lot of it's vanity. But they are... people are complaining that nightclubs are closing because no one wants to go out and drink. They want to stay at home doing exercise routines on YouTube.
Do you know how many units are in that? Does anyone know how many units are in that?
I'm going to say 8.
I'm going to consult my paperwork because I don't know.
6 or 8. It's an even number, isn't it? 6 or 8.
In here, so let's just be clear. So, in a glass of wine, because I didn't even know this, and I know what the... Do we all know what the drink limit is? Or they say...
14 units a week,
You've done your homework.
That's for a man, right? Isn't that less for a woman?
No, so
I didn't want to be sexist.
No, so you think it's 14. Do you know what it is?
What?
The units, so men, women in this country, do you know what it is?
How many they recommend, or how many people drink? How much people drink?
Limit.
Recommend, I think it's 16, isn't it?
16.
I would say it's fewer than that. Recommended, I thought it would be more like 10 or 12.
I just make a point of trying to drink less than my doctor.
Yeah. But the point is, the only one around this table that knows is Graham Lasso, and that's only because there's a squat who's done his own homework.
Swat.
Yeah, you little swat.
I'm a bore to go out with because I actually measure every drink that I have.
You don't?
No.
I was going to say.
It's 14, so 14 units per week, and that is for men and women. We're equal, and we're one of the only countries that are equal. But I just don't even think that people even understand. So there's 3 units in a large glass of wine. So when you ask me what I would do about this, one of the first things I would do is stop selling 250 millilitre glasses in pubs. I would. I think it's a huge amount. And by the way, this will impact me because I love my wine. But I would stop. I'd have a 175 and a 125 if that's what you want.
You just buy more of them if you really want to drink that much.
And do you know what I would also do?
You could also serve drinks. Sorry to interrupt you. You could also serve drinks with water. They do that a lot in Europe as well. You have a glass of wine, but you also get water. You don't have to pay for the water. And it just dilutes everything, and it's actually healthier over a longer period of time. That has an impact.
Yeah.
I mean, the problem is you go to places like Switzerland, and a friend of ours came. We ended up in Switzerland with some friends. She ordered a glass of white. The waiter came and poured it because they do everything by the measure. She drank the whole thing because it was this big and went, "Yeah, that's nice. I'll have a glass." He nearly fell over.
But if you I think in supermarkets, if you sold smaller bottles, like half bottles or something, that would be better. But I just have a deep concern. I also think about self-medicating.
OK, as a result of this,
as
a result of your self-analysis, are you now going to drink less?
Do you know what? And I'm not even joking. Given the research that I've done, I had no idea that alcohol, for example, can be linked to breast cancer.
I want a yes or a no.
Yes, I'm going to be more conscious in my drinking.
You mean you're going to drink
yes.
and be conscious about it, or you're going to drink less?
I'm going to be drinking and consciously drinking, and I will be advising everyone to do the.
You're going to be a bundle of fun to go out with, aren't you?
No, but I think Michelle's going to prove that she's a bundle of fun. Now, I'm going to stop you there.
I'm obviously going to drink this straight away afterwards, but, you know.
Put that away. Do you think you're in control of your life? Think you got that job because you nailed that interview? Think you chose your wife's birthday present? Think you chose your wife? Well, if you applied for that job online, bought the gift with one click, or if you met the love of your life thanks to internet dating, it wasn't down to you. It was down to an algorithm. A computer calculation that chose your CV, suggested presents based on your browsing history, and filtered potential partners to find your perfect match. I've had enough of that. And for every new job or couple finding love, there's a mortgage rejected or a chance of a dream job lost. And that's before we get to the global issues. Automated trading is thought to be behind the most recent flash crash of the pound. Mathematical models were at least partly responsible for the subprime mortgage market that led to the financial crisis. It's no longer us driving our decisions, it's data, and it's dangerous.
Data isn't dangerous. We live in a technological age, and I promise you, this is going to get more and more and more. We ain't seen nothing yet. All of those examples that you use are absolutely right. So algorithms and big data and AI, it's all driving the things that you've just described. This is just the start of it. So automation is getting more and more advanced, more human-like. We are just going to see this going more, and so we should. You cannot fight against automation. You cannot fight against transformation. What we can try and do, and one of the big problems and where I would agree with you, is some people are falling out of the system. Some people are being affected negatively by these algorithms. And what we need to do in those situations, and one of the problems is algorithms are opaque by their definition, by their nature. It's very opaque. It's very hard to understand, well, what is it? What was the aspect that made me not get that mortgage or that job or this or that? So what we do need to do is look towards how can we create transparency to stop some of that bias and unfairness that may or may not be happening.
Where they're dangerous is the fact that all of those things you've just said are coming after the algorithms are embedded in massive decision-making processes that we have. So if you're
Who writes the algorithms?
A person.
Yeah. So this isn't just
people
computers.
are fallible. People are fallible. One person, because they can write a computer program or can code, it doesn't mean that the questions that they're feeding in are the right questions. And there's countless examples of where a computer system interprets the information incorrectly. So an example is Tesla, for instance, the car manufacturer.
Yeah.
Now, you know, they've got lots of cars on the road, but there has been one death. Somebody who was, you know, effectively in a driverless car at that point was very sadly killed because the computer program misinterpreted the environment and that resulted in his death. The other thing is that when you're dealing with the poorest people in society, they often come up against computer systems for decisions that affect their lives.
What's your answer? What are you wanting? What are you asking for?
Poor credit ratings lead to computers deciding that actually if you've got a poor credit rating, you're not particularly secure or good at your job.
I get it. So what are you wanting?
What am I wanting? Well, as you say, a much better management of that process, but also not a reliance as we've got on...
management by who?
Well, by all of us. We have to take...
I wouldn't have a Tesco card and things like that because I don't want what I do in my life and what I consume and the rest of it to be examined in that way.
Yeah, but it's going to take much more than you not having a Tesco card to stop your life being
It is, but I can make my rather pathetic gestures, can't I? Which is what that is.
Yeah, but I think they're interested in your consumption of toilet roll, Greg. Honestly, they're not that worried about it.
They're interested in everything, Nick. That's the problem.
I'll tell you what I worry about the most, you know, is the fact that the information we consume is now determined by algorithms. I mean, people don't buy newspapers anymore, and they don't...
Well, it's not quite true. Not in the same numbers.
Hardly. They're dying. People consume their news through social media. Nobody knows Facebook's algorithm when it comes to news feeds. People are being fed news that they want to read, that they want to hear. Their worldview is being reinforced by these algorithms that somebody somewhere is deciding. And I think it's
Why is that a problem?
Because people
it's narrowing down the...
People are getting further and further apart. I mean, just look at the American presidential election. When you look at how far apart people are. There is no middle ground. People are being entrenched into these extreme positions, and everything they consume, all the news and information they consume, is just reinforcing their worldview. And it really worries me that the divides are getting bigger. And it's more worrying because I don't understand how that's happening. I could not tell you how social media platforms determine the news that you consume. And I think, I mean, you asked Graham what he's asking for. The thing that worries me is that, as well as making decisions about our lives, these algorithms are going to eventually replace our jobs because everything's getting automated.
That is the key, because this is what I think that's the worrying part. Because I think, is it next year they're going to have drones that are going to deliver packages in the skies? You can already go to the supermarket, not talk to anybody, check yourself out. They're talking about driverless cabs. I won't mention the app firm. We all know of whom I speak. Driverless cabs. What are all these people getting? So if we haven't got people in the supermarkets, we haven't got people driving cabs, we haven't got people doing courier deliveries, what are all these people going to do for jobs? There'll be nothing left.
And also, that's already happening in terms of processing information. Algorithms and systems can process huge amounts of information on a scale that is unprecedented.
Yeah, and it's brilliant.
Now, but that doesn't mean it's brilliant. Why is it brilliant? Because the results... The results...
No, I agree with you.
But the results are so generic, it doesn't allow for individuals. We're all individuals. We have individual circumstances, individual talents, abilities.
Wow.
And what we're doing, apparently, and with this process, you know, I'm not against data, I'm not against learning from statistics, but ultimately that can only be a very small, I believe, part of the process, because we've got to rely on the human intervention and understanding of situations.
In answer to your Nick's point, I mean, when I was young, people talked about we were looking forward to the leisure society, but actually people weren't going to have to work. Actually, people work harder now than ever before. So when the other things emerge for jobs, I suspect they will.
Obviously we need engineers. We'll need people to service the drones and the driverless cars.
But who could have foreseen any of the things that are in jobs today? The jobs people do today 30 years ago,
but now we can foresee it now. I mean, the real blame for me is with the government. If you ask the government what is their strategy for coping in the world within our lifetimes in which huge swathes of the employment market will disappear, they don't have one. They literally don't. They're not skilling people so that people coming through the education system now are going to be able to function in that world.
Politicians live on 5-year time.
For now.
They don't live for 30 years' time.
Yeah, but so Nick, you're absolutely right in what you're saying.
Okay.
So the labour market will transform significantly. This is almost like another industrial revolution, if you like. It's a digital revolution. It is happening. We have to prepare ourselves. We have to skill ourselves. We're going slightly off the level of algorithms. In China, by 2020, they're going to create this big, massive government database where every single citizen has almost like this social credit score, if you like, where everything is analysed, whether they've had a driving ticket, their fiscal stuff, all of this stuff is coming together. So this is only going to get worse. And I think that what you've got to do is, when you talk about what's the government going to do about it, the worst thing that a government can try and do is try and put cumbersome regulations on some of these things.
But do you think that's good, though? Do you think that's good that every piece of somebody's information, if they've made a mistake, that's going to be flagged up by a mathematical formula?
I think you're establishing yourself with a great business opportunity here, because what will happen is human intervention will become value add. So if you've got this situation where all of these people are losing out because of computer says no, there's a nice value add there for an organisation to look at people case by case. It's not the world we're going to be living in. We have to embrace it, we have to prepare ourselves for it, and we just have to make sure that we're there and we're working with it.
But there's no chance of getting value added if the computer's already said no 3 times.
Well, there is. You'd set up a brand new business that isn't involved in computers, that employs people, and it's those people. And by the way, let's not forget very briefly, humans are biased too. So by getting rid of these computers, you ain't suddenly going to have this non-discrimination going on in the world.
Thanks, Michelle. Back to biased humans. That's exactly what I want to talk about next. I'm going to be saying that the time and place to show this, a piece of paper, not an algorithm, is the airport. It is not the hospital. When you go to hospital to give birth, you need a change of clothes, nappies, maternity pads, nipple cream. The checklist alone, I can see some people squirming around me here, the checklist alone can be overwhelming for a new mum. Now at my local hospital, you'll need to add your passport as well. South London's St George's Hospital is to start requiring expectant mothers to prove that they are British citizens or else pay for their treatment. The NHS says the plans are a welcome step to curb so-called health tourism. It says funding childbirth for foreign mothers costs the taxpayer £180 million a year. Whilst the evidence for that claim is patchy, the consequences of this horrendous idea are crystal clear. It's hard to think of anyone more vulnerable in this society than women on the verge of childbirth. Demanding passports in hospitals will create an atmosphere of hostility at a time when they need care. Worse still, it could deter some women from seeking antenatal care at all, creating a two-tier system where children are born with avoidable health problems and mothers' lives are put at risk. Is this seriously the kind of country we want to become?
Got a car?
Yeah.
If you broke down, do you think you'd have to pay to an emergency breakdown service?
Yeah.
Got a boiler?
Yeah.
If you want someone to come fix your boiler, do you think you should pay for a boiler breakdown service? Yep. OK. So why, when you pack your bag for your creams and your nappies and your everything else like that...
Are you equating the child of a foreign mother to a boiler or a car engine?
No, I'm using examples. Why shouldn't you have paid into the system so that you get the care?
The point I'm making is not about the principle of people who aren't entitled to free care not paying for it. The point I'm making is the cost. So, first of all...
Well, that's the point I'm making. So perhaps you'd like to address my question.
How many foreign mothers are currently being treated for maternity services on the NHS?
I haven't got a program.
Nobody knows.
OK.
Nobody knows.
One is too many.
Because the government hasn't done the research. I'm saying...
Well, one hospital trust, which I think is your local one, has got like 4.5 million... If I'm right with the figures, 4.5 million per annum.
I don't know the integrity of that data because there's not been any official study.
You've got to believe some figures.
How can you introduce a policy so draconian that you potentially put the lives of infants at risk?
What's
draconian?
Draconian
is taking a woman who is about to give birth and potentially deterring her from having treatment. That is draconian, and you wouldn't do it until you had solid evidence.
I defer to you. Sorry, just give me this. I defer to you because obviously, although my ex-wife and I did it twice, you were the woman you'll remember. As I recall, you go to the hospital, you present yourself when you're 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks. That is where the woman shows her passport. Yeah. That is where, I'm very sorry, Mrs Jones, if you haven't got a British passport, you're going to have to pay for this. It's not literally as her waters break. You've misinterpreted the headline.
No, I haven't misinterpreted
it. Well, you have, because
I haven't misinterpreted
as a woman's going,
can you
not going to suddenly say, where's your passport?
Can you not see... Well, first
I've been
of all,
there.
two things. Can you not see that having to show your passport is a deterrent for people who might have an unclear immigration status, they might be waiting for asylum, for whatever reason? No, it's not the point. You want those women to go without antenatal care and potentially have their children...
They shouldn't be here.
But they are here, Nick.
Oh, well, let's not have any laws.
The question I'm asking is, do you want to live in a society where women like that, who are here for whatever reason, and you don't know the reason they're here, go without health care?
I want to live in a society, just this, Graham, I want to live in a society where people who need drugs to combat cancer can get them because the NHS has money, where people who need operations who've paid into the system for 6-7 decades, the NHS has the money. It is not spending £1.8 billion on health tourism.
The fact, or the question from my point of view, is this hospital, St George's, is it saying it would deny somebody treatment if they didn't have a passport? No. That's the key for me in terms of the principle. I would hate to end up in a system... I would hate to end up in a system that was like the American system, where someone gets knocked over and you have to ask them about their insurance before you do what is humanly caring or whatever and humane. Of course, I don't think anybody would sign up to that principle over here because of what we've inherited with the principles of the NHS. But I do feel that now that we're down this Brexit route, and we can go on about that all day, the fact of the matter is that we do have to look at what people are paying into the system, as Nick says, and understand who is acceptable. It doesn't mean they should be... not have access in emergency situations. But, for instance, if I go to Spain, I have to take my EU card with me, which means if I get injured or have an accident, I present that and I get complimentary treatment because of the relationship within the EU. There's going to be, whether you like it or not, there's going to be a tightening up of the system, and some of it, I think, is for good reason, purely on the basis that the NHS doesn't work properly.
You said 1.8 billion. I don't think...
A year, per annum.
For maternity, it's
not for maternity,
it's 180 million, which is a small amount given the whole
180 million.
Normal use of the NHS by foreign visitors, 1.8, not maternity, 1.8 billion across the whole thing.
Sure, but you can't... But then he gets his treatment fee in Spain in exchange, so you can't just take help from people who aren't in this country, who haven't got British passports. It depends how much money it is. If we're talking about comparative... I mean, we're talking about a system that's got 150 billion pounds a year goes on the NHS.
Yes, approximately.
If we're talking about couple of 100 million,
180
honestly.
million.
Oh, my God.
No, but this is just the start. This is just the start.
No,
We're talking about
but
couple hundred million.
the cost of
I'll
collecting
give in.
and doing it probably costs you that. Now, I'm not saying I disagree with you. I'm saying I do think that the health service should be for about people who've paid into it. That's the point. But there are some things that it's just too difficult to collect the money. Now, it'll be very interesting. I hope someone's doing a study of your local hospital.
I hope so too.
I hope they're doing a proper piece of research to see what impact it has, what effect it has, how many people they turn away, so we can actually make a proper judgment on whether it was worth it or not.
I hope so too, but it's not just about the money, it's about the principle. We are creating, deliberately, an atmosphere of hostility for people who are foreign nationals. And if this was a perfect system, if this were a perfect system and there were no human error, it would be different. But we already have essentially ethnic profiling going on in schools. Schools have been asked to collect data about where children were born, foreign children. They've started only asking visibly minority children. They're not asking white children where they're born. They've been targeting, and this has been reported, children who are black or brown and asking them for data on their nationality. You can see easily a situation in which a white British person goes into a hospital.
Yeah, but surely if you've got a system, sorry, you haven't. No.
Right, listen, you talk about we're deliberately doing this, we're deliberately doing that. What is deliberately happening here is a deliberate abuse of the NHS. This is the National Health Service. It's not the International Health Service. It's set up to serve people who have paid into it. My mum and my sister, by the way, are both National Health Services nurses. I respect the NHS massively. But there is almost a trade that's been deliberately set up now to bring people over here deliberately to defraud the NHS. I think it's outrageous. Now, do I think it's draconian that I'm going to say to someone, hi there, before you use these services, can I just check you're entitled to? No, I don't. I think it's basic, I think it's standard, and I think it's been missing for way too long. I don't just want to see this in this trust. I want to see this rolled out across the whole of the NHS. Emergency care is not going to be turned down. So if you're there, your waters are breaking, you will still be looked after, and rightly so. But what they're going to stop doing is, if you think you can come and wander in and get your entire labour looked after and paid for, you can't, and nor should you.
And what will the consequences of that be? You know,
hopefully,
and there's cost
people not coming to do that.
But the point is, these are women who are here who need antenatal care. If you put them off from seeking antenatal care at the earliest opportunity, you're possibly going to create problems which are going to cost the NHS more when they present as emergency
stop them
cases.
doing that.
I'm not saying I disagree with the principle of people paying into the NHS. The question is, are the first people you really want to go after pregnant women? Is that really who you want to start with? Not just because, as far as we know, they only cost the NHS 180 million. They are a fraction. And they are also the most vulnerable.
Do you accept that there is something called health tourism going on? That people are coming here deliberately? I don't know.
I think it's an emotive term, but I'm told that there are people deliberately exploiting the NHS.
What I want to know is how big is the scale of the problem?
Yeah, nobody knows because that research
let's do that
has not
piece
been
of
done.
work and then
you can't make policies like
decisions.
this until you know for sure how much it's costing and how much you're going to save.
If you've got a system that doesn't prejudice, is the same for everyone, so that every one of us in any given situation has to produce some identification, doesn't that protect some of those people that you're worried about are being profiled?
You mean a universal identification? But there's two things. There's one, the ethnic profiling, and there's two, deterring people who, for whatever reason, do not have their documentation.
I think Greg's waters are broken. Greg's waters are broken.
I think we know the argument, and it's me next. And I've got a question for you. What do these men have in common?
Welcome back. Now, before you hear from Greg, being blessed, or is that cursed, with not one but two luminaries of English football, if you can still call it that, it would be criminal not to ask what you both think about Gareth Southgate. 2-0 against Malta, population 420,000. 0-0 against Slovenia, population 2 million. Bad, terrible, embarrassing, and that's just Graham. 67th in the world, right, Slovenia. We've never, ever failed to beat them before. This is the brave new dawn. Wayne Rooney was part of the problem until 71 minutes in and he's part of the solution. We are all over the place like a crazy woman's poop, aren't we?
That is the sort of the press take, I think, of the game. From my point of view, I think he's come in very difficult circumstances. He's handled the pressure in terms of the way he's dealt with the press very well, the scrutiny very well. 4 points from 2 games. In these situations, there's a lot to improve on, but actually...
Why do you all talk? Do you all sign up to some sort of
no, because we know how difficult it is.
Each other in?
We know how difficult it is.
Slovenia, 67th in the world.
Almost every Slovenian player plays in a top league in Europe.
Mate, if Joe Hart hadn't had probably the game of his England career, what a...
Yeah, but that's what he's in goal to do, though.
Yeah, but we didn't even look like scoring.
But he's in goal to do that sometimes. He can't, you can't say that we deserve to lose but for our goalkeeper.
Do you take any positives?
I do, plenty of positives.
You are
lots to improve.
Water.
Now. But you're the sort of person who would have been slagging off Joe Hart during the Euros because he made 2 mistakes.
Of course I was. Yeah, of course
you would. I mean, that's what you do all the time.
We talked about this before.
Gareth
right? You used to run.
No. Let me answer it rather than you just talking.
It's a fair point.
It could get boring.
What do you mean could?
Well, I'm sure that many people think it does. But Gareth Southgate's had the job for two games. You can't judge it on that. You've got to give someone
10 days.
You've got to give them longer than that to try to work it out. Trying to work out the system. I come back to the point I've made to you before. We have a real problem in this country, and that is that in the Premier League, we do not have enough English players. And it's a fundamental problem that unless we do something about it, the England team will not succeed.
But shouldn't the English lads who are playing in the Premier League, with all these amazing Spaniards, shouldn't their game be being lifted because they're playing alongside?
But I think I would sort of contradict Greg slightly, is the fact that there's a good, talented group of players. There's some good young players in the under-21s and the under-19s, and it's down to whoever's in charge.
Lasso once.
Yeah, potential, never fulfilled. But you've got a chance to get some stability in there and actually get these guys playing to their potential, and then we can at least say we didn't win, maybe, but
OK, now
we're proud of them.
I left the FA, so I didn't have to talk about football. So I say this very reluctantly, but recent events have finally convinced me that Nigel Farage is a political genius. As much as I dislike what the man stands for, I have begrudgingly come to the conclusion that he is a political giant in a world disproportionately made up of lightweights. When he first appeared on the scene, he was completely dismissed. I mean, remember this?
Nigel Farage, MEP, spokesman for the UK Independence Party.
We must be off our rocker. We're subsidising our own competitors.
Our main message is that we as a party believe that Britain will be better off outside the European Union. If that, classifies us as being loonies, well, we can live with that.
So what has he done since then? Well, in less than 10 years, he has virtually single-handedly changed British history by first promoting the idea of Brexit, then forcing David Cameron to have a referendum. And what we've discovered since he stepped down as UKIP leader is that he did all this leading a political party that seems to be made up of bruisers, eccentrics and nutters, who between them couldn't organise the proverbial in a brewery. Without Farage, UKIP is probably doomed to oblivion, which just goes to show what a remarkable leader he was. How many other political leaders have changed the course of history in less than a decade? Not many.
Well, I think genius is an insult to people that are geniuses.
Well, I said he was a political genius. I didn't say he was a genius. He's not Einstein. Let's not kid ourselves.
No, we can all agree on that. I think the fact is that where he's been very clever is he's had a single policy at a perfect time, and he's created and delivered in this culture of fear and xenophobia. Where I think he doesn't deserve credit is the fact that he's created this mess, but he's walked away from it as soon as he's achieved what was his only ambition, and that was to create this sense of nationalism that means that we are now not part of some big European future, but back to a small island mentality that we're gonna end up with.
I agree. I mean, I disagree with him on almost everything, but you've got to look at what he achieved.
I mean, but
it was a remarkable achievement. How he managed to do it, I don't know. But you look now at his party, what is left behind, and the events of the last couple of weeks have been shambolic, haven't they? They're a joke. There's no leader. There's no one who looks like they can be a leader. He somehow managed to convince, I think it was 11-12% to vote for his party last time. Because of the pressure inside the Conservative Party that UKIP was bringing, you got Cameron had a referendum, and it's changed the history of this country. Now, I happen to believe it's a terrible mistake, But you've got to give him credit.
He hasn't had a blemishless career. I mean, this is a man who has never been able to win a parliamentary seat.
Yep.
He's never been able to... He's been able to transfer 11-12% of the vote into one constituency. He wasn't able to get even official campaign status for the referendum campaign that was basically his idea.
He did win it.
He won it. He won it.
Pretty impressive.
But
so he did even better. So he didn't get official status, so you're actually arguing against yourself.
The side that won it disowned him, you know, and you could argue, actually, it was the fact... he won it indirectly because it was by co-opting the political establishment, and it was Boris, you know, for the Brexit side, that really won it. If it had been Farage on his own, would he have won it? I don't know. I'm not saying he's not a shrewd mover, and I just want to bring in as well some of the political company he's been keeping, because I think we've got a clip of his new best friend.
What you've done is amazing. You were so far-thinking, and now people are starting to say, gee, that was a great vote. You know, right after the vote, they were saying, oh, well, maybe we should redo it. This is some kind of an upset. People are starting to say you're very smart, especially with what's happening over there. So congratulations. A great honour, man. Great honour.
Well, Donald Trump thinks he's very smart. That says it all.
Same camp as Greg Dyke. The Greg Dyke, the Donald Trump of the panel.
No. But when we look back at this period of our history, he's going to be the major figure. It's not going to be Cameron, certainly, other than for an enormous mistake of having a referendum. It's not going to be Theresa May. It's going to be Farage. And now, I hate it. I hate the idea of Brexit. I hate the sort of racial undertones within all they've done. But he's been incredibly successful.
It's interesting you mentioned Mr Cameron, because you called them bruisers, eccentrics and nutters. This is Mr Cameron actually talking to me on my LBC radio show in 2006 as Leader of the Opposition.
I mean, UKIP, I mean, it's just a sort of, you know, bunch of... they're just trying to make a bit of mischief. I mean, as far as I can see...
UKIP is a bunch of what?
Well, fruitcakes and loonies and closet racists, mostly.
And isn't the reality, Greg, coming back to you because you started this chat, the reality is that Mr Cameron thought he was going to shoot the UKIP fox with a referendum. All he did was feed the chickens.
Yes.
That's the reality.
That's exactly what he did. Instead of saying, look, we don't have to take any notice of this, that we know we believe in Europe, we know in our election manifestos we've always supported being in Europe. Instead, he put into his election manifesto that we're going to have a referendum.
Yeah, but then it's part of his success then, not genius, but arrogance from everybody else involved in the political parties.
Well, he did come from nowhere to 12% of the vote in a comparatively short period of time.
Michelle's wearing UKIP colours. We haven't heard from you yet.
And he would have had, or UKIP would have had, a lot more seats if we'd have had a different voting system in this country. But I've got a lot of respect for you for saying what you're saying, because I know a lot of people really dislike his policies and what he stood for. So to actually stand up and say, even though you don't like those things, you respect what he achieved, you know, I think that's a great thing to say and do, because no matter what you think of what his stance was, the fact that he had the courage of his convictions continuously to stand for what he believed in, to push for it. I respect that in a politician. I'm fed up of politicians saying one thing, doing something else. It's ridiculous. He stood by what he believed. I also, however, share your view when I think it is a shame that now he's got what he wanted, he didn't take it to the next level, because I think he could have added some value with that.
How can he? There's no... May wouldn't...
Surely that's courage in your convictions, though, isn't it? It's by actually then saying, right, this is what we wanted, this is what I've fought my whole political career on, let's stand by and do something to make the country better.
But tell me what he practically does. May's not going to have him in the cabinet, so what is he meant to do?
But why? Because I think that he is somebody, and I agree with you, it's not a straightforward answer. I can't answer your question by saying, well, he could see it through by doing X, and it's a simple answer, because it's not. But I think that it would have been interesting for me to see a way, for them to figure out a way where he could have done something together. And I don't know what the answer is.
Is it not? Surely, logically, it should have been a springboard for UKIP to become more popular because of the narrative of Brexit.
But that speaks to Michelle's accurate summation of our current voting system, which is actually unfair. I don't think there's a better alternative, and we've talked about this in previous weeks, so we don't need to go over that old argument. But it's very unfair to say, to quote you, you said he's walked away. Well, nobody gave him the chance.
If he was a genius, which I don't think he is, then this would have been a clever strategy.
So you think he's lucky?
No, yeah, he's lucky. But what's happened is clever in the sense that he's got the political establishment to adopt his cause, rendering his party redundant. I don't think he's a genius, because I don't think that's what he intended. I don't think he intended for UKIP to become completely irrelevant.
Do you respect that he achieved his objective?
He achieved his objective. I mean, I don't respect him because I don't think he's a genius. I think he's a bigot. He's a bigot
you can be a bigot
who's based on xenophobia, who luckily tapped into a moment in the British public and political mind, where people felt disillusioned, and he exploited that. I'm not saying people who voted for him are bigots, but he exploited their genuine disillusionment and made them believe that the answer to their problems wasn't deindustrialisation, wasn't the decline in manufacturing, wasn't the fact that we're now dominated by financial services industry. It was foreigners. He made them believe that, and they voted for him, and that was
When has Mr Farage
working.
acted in a bigoted way? I'm not talking about some of his followers. When has Mr Farage acted in a bigoted way?
His entire political lexicon, the vocabulary he uses, the way he fought his campaign, the Turkish immigrants, the language about us being swamped, it's racist.
Well, I can give you a photo opportunity as well to see where he took advantage of everything that Afua is talking about when he stood behind that picture of Breaking Point, the European, what have Europe done for us? They've failed us. And that, I think, is part of the narrative. It's very clever, but ultimately it's deceitful.
And let's not forget it had echoes of Nazi propaganda.
Well, it's also what a lot of people feel. I mean, maybe, over to you, Greg, is the solution, and you, Graham, he's been successful against all the odds. England team manager? What do you think?
So, genius or not, there's no doubt Nigel Farage, or should I say Sir Nigel Farage, is back.
Little millions, voters feeling just embarrassed. Haters don't listen to experts. They start feeling like prisoners, helpless. Till someone come along on a mission, yells Brexit, the visionary. Vision is scary. He'll start a revolution. Live in the airways level. So just let me level up, asking the facts. I got everyone who sings it's a disaster, such a catastrophe. For you to see so damn much among us. You ask for me? Well, I'm back. Stick you in attention, in and gonna print and under your skin like a splinter, the centre of attention. Back for the win, in arresting the best things in wrestling, investing in your voters. Here's investing, testing. Attention, please, feel the tension. Soon as someone mentions me, here's 10 cents. My 2 cents is free. A nuisance. Who sent? You sent for me. Now this looks like a job for me. So everybody just follow me, because we need a little controversy. Because it feels so empty without me. I said this looks like a job for me. So everybody just follow me, because we need a little controversy. Because it feels so empty without me. Look who's back. Back again. Nigel back.
Mr Farage, who I will make it very clear, although I think he's a political genius, I disagree with everything he says and everything he's about. And actually, there have been some pretty unpleasant political geniuses in the past, and I think he's one of them. Well, that's it from us this week. Tell us which of us won the debate, or who should stop talking rubbish, Nick, by heading to our Facebook and Twitter pages. See you next time.